For someone that's going to be, someone that wants all the gadgets, the guy that like used to buy everything from Sky Mall, he's going to want the Scott,
Yeah.
Some people don't remember Sky Mall, so it's fine. But
Hey everybody, and welcome back to our fall field test with trail bikes. By now, you've probably seen all the individual reviews. And this time around, we're here to discuss all the bikes together in our roundtable discussion. Kaz, usually we're arguing a lot in these videos and we disagree, which is great. But this time around, I think we're pretty in line with a lot of stuff.
we're pretty close. I'm sure we can still find things to disagree about, though.
100%.
Yeah.
Kaz, I want to start this off by talking about which of these 5 bikes best suits somebody who likes to maybe pedal more and maybe doesn't want to point themselves down some scary stuff, and which bike suits that kind of person who wants to go down the scary stuff. So for you, if you were a pedaler, which bike would you pick?
Yeah, I think I'd put the Hightower on that list. That would probably be the one I'd pick for somebody that wants that efficient, snappy feel. The Yeti would be up there too, that SB140. Good pedaling performance, a little bit more all about traction rather than snappiness. But so I think someone that wants that, like that snap, the Hightower has it.
Yeah, for me, I was really impressed with the Trek's pedaling performance. I think partly because it is quite different from previous versions of that bike. Even though the bike itself is way more capable on rowdy terrain, it also pedals better. Like it's better in all the places.
Yeah.
So for me, I like pedaling a lot. I think I would choose that one. Kaz, you like to point yourself down some pretty rowdy things. If you were going to do that on one of these trail bikes, which would you choose?
I think the Trek would be pretty high up on that list, especially in the mullet configuration.
Yeah.
Which, in full disclosure, I've been trying one of those out with a 160 fork, and I really like how that feels.
Yeah, that's your kind of bike for sure.
Yeah, just kind of a nice, like, playful bike, but you can still smash some things and still, like you said, climbs well. So I think that Trek would be high on my list for someone that wants to get a little more aggressive. And that Scott would be up there too. I mean, that does have more travel. It's got basically enduro bike geometry.
Yeah.
So I think that's another option.
For me, I think I would pick that Trek. Again, honestly, because I can make it as slack as I need it to ride whatever I want to ride. But at the same time, like I said before, she pedals real well. So yeah, that's impressive to me. Kaz, let's forget all about that stuff. I want to talk about having fun. And for me, the bike that I had the most fun on, I'm honestly surprised about this, is the Santa Cruz. I got on that thing and I just gelled with it instantly. And like I've said many times before, cornering is everything. That's where I have the most fun. Like if I have one good corner ride, it's a good ride. On that Santa Cruz, I had like 20 good corners in a row, which almost never happens to me. So it was the most fun. What about you?
Man, all these bikes are really fun. I don't know. On the fun scale, I think I put the Norco pretty high up there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I kind of like that one too, just because you do have a little less travel. So when you pull off a move, you kind of think you're getting away with something.
Yeah.
You're like, ooh, I just did that, and I've got a 140 fork and not much travel. So I think the Norco's high in the fun
Would
level.
the Norco be the bike that surprised you the most?
I kind of had a feeling it would be good.
Yeah.
They've kind of, my expectations have been pretty high for Norco because they've been on a pretty good run lately.
Yeah.
So I don't think it surprised me the most, but I was definitely impressed with it. There's like, it's a good little tank, kind of like we were talking about how it'd be fun to put 27.5 wheels on it and make it a slalom bike. It's just one of those kind of, almost reminds me like a shop rat bike.
Yeah.
Like if you got that frame, you can build it however you want. So with good geometry, like we mentioned, it's kind of hard to go wrong once the other pieces are in place.
Yeah.
So I think that one didn't surprise me, but I was glad that it upheld my expectations.
Yeah, yeah.
But speaking of surprises though, was there a bike that surprised you? I think there was.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the Hightower surprised me.
Right.
Just because I was like, I don't know, like I was kind of bored of it, to be honest. Like I'm sorry, Santa Cruz, but don't listen to me because then I got on it and I loved the damn thing. I would say I was surprised by the Norco, to be honest with you. Like before we got here, I'd put a ton of miles on this thing. That poor Norco was tired by the time we got here. But we were riding it back to back against bikes with more travel. And we talk a lot about geo being most important. And again, this just underlines it. Like, yeah, it has less travel. Yes, it costs way less. And yeah, you can notice those things for sure. But I'm not having any less fun on it,
Yeah.
which is pretty dang impressive.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Which one were you? Disappointed is not the right word because they're all crazy capable. But which one would you change?
I think the Yeti is the one that I would change.
Right?
It's just like,
It's
really
close.
good. It's so good as far as suspension performance goes. The feel of that Yeti really matches what I'm looking for in a bike. Like I want it to feel like I have enough travel. I don't want it to be harsh. It's super comfy to ride, but I think for my preferred terrain, it just doesn't feel, it's like a little pointier than I want it to be.
I want to just underline that. You said preferred terrain as well. Like we've mentioned this a bunch of times. We're riding some like, it's all trail bike terrain, but it's like BC trail bike terrain, you know? So it's fairly aggressive. And like I said, I think if we were in other places in the world, you know, if we've done a field test in Quebec, we've in Sedona.
In Colorado, where the bike's designed. Like it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I tend to like to do, maybe not dumb might not be the right word, but it also might be the right word. Dumb things on little bikes. And that one doesn't quite scratch that itch for me. Like it's close, but it's not. And I also, you know, I like the option to maybe over fork a bike a little bit. And that one, you really can't put a bigger fork on it without really starting to tweak it. So that one, like we were saying, disappointed is the wrong word, but just didn't quite do it for me in the way that I'd hoped it would. One bike that did surprise me though was that Scott. I'm still very torn about the whole concept of all the integration, all the things, but I like riding that bike. Like it has a good feel. Years ago, I had a Ransom as my personal bike, and I really like that. And this one, it reminds me a lot of the Ransom in some ways, and with improvements in others. So, yeah, it's like I'm just really conflicted with it because it does have that silly cable routing, all the integration, some of the slapping noises from the cables inside the frame. There's all that on one side, but if you just take away all of the features, and I'm not going to call them gimmicks, but maybe things where the engineers just went wild, and just how the bike rides, I really like how it rides. It's an interesting
bike, isn't it?
It's really interesting, and I think they got the geometry right and the ride feel and characteristics. It's really good. It's really light too. Which again, we haven't been stressing weight that much, but like you could build that up. 29-pound bike with everything that it has is impressive.
150 rear end, 160 fork, and it's ready for anything.
Like that's your big, like all mountain bike.
I'll be honest, with all that integration, all that stuff, I was sort of hoping like something would go wrong, and I know you had to figure out some of the cable routing, and that wasn't as easy as a non-integrated system like that. But all that stuff also worked just fine, didn't it? Yeah,
it's not really that big of a deal. It's not as crazy as I think some people think it is. You know, the downside of that shock is that the overall layout of the shock is proprietary, but what's inside is all the same. So, you know, if you blew a seal or had some kind of issue with that, you could get all those parts from Fox. It's not like it's some crazy unavailable piece, but that is another downside. So it's like, for me personally, it's probably not the bike I gravitate towards, but I can see there being a place for it in the world.
Let's talk about components on some of these bikes for a few minutes as well. One thing that I wasn't impressed by is some of the drivetrain components on them. Like some of those GX derailleurs, the clutches felt really weak right off the bat. We had some lever play. As far as that stuff goes, did you notice anything? The wheels were great on all these bikes. That's worth mentioning.
Yeah, we had 0 flat tires over the course of a few weeks of testing. And, you know, granted, we did have double down casing tires, but also we smashed them hard onto some very pointy rocks.
Kaz, we were beating the out of these bikes in the bike park.
It's pretty good that's a good testament to the tires and just the wheel quality. And so overall, I mean, that's really, I'm glad we didn't have flat tires. That's one of the reasons we went with a little heavier duty casing so we wouldn't have to deal with it. But it kind of, I mean, that's just something I'm glad about. So I don't know where to put that, but yay for tires that don't get flats.
Yeah, exactly. Let's play Kiss, Marry, Kill, and then let's get out of here.
All right.
Which bike are you making out with?
Maybe we'll go Hightower. Hightower is good for a fling. Like it's fun. It's just like slaps corners. It's playful. It's a good time. Yeah,
Kaz, I would agree. After a few good corners on that bike, I would have easily dragged it off into the bush and had a little makeout sesh with that thing. I fell in love after going through some corners. It was so good. What about, which bike would you marry? What bike do you want to be with for the rest of your life in a long-term commitment where you support each other and grow as a couple?
So nice. I think it's gonna be the Trek, and that's because it's so versatile and adaptable. So if you get a little bit tired of one configuration, you can change it into something else. So it's got like multiple personalities, and I think that's
always what you want in a partner.
That's what I look for. I don't want it to be too stable. That's too boring. So I think that's what's nice about it. You can just kind of, you want it to be your aggressive downhilly thing or your playful go up the hills kind of bike. I know. So that Trek is just the versatility there really makes it a good pick for a bike you'd have for a while. I want to disagree with you, but I can't because you're right, which is really freaking annoying, guys. It is a bike that I could live with for a long time, and if part of the year I felt like getting rowdy, I could change things up and it'll be ready for that. And if the other part of the year I just wanted to do big pedal rides and ride less aggressive terrain, it could also be a bike for that. Kaz, we got to talk about
which bike you would kill.
I don't want to kill anything.
They're all so, like, okay, so we definitely complained about some of the things. We complained about some of the components, the builds, and we had some issues with some other stuff. But let's just say all of these things are crazy, wildly capable.
Yeah.
We would happily do 8-hour days on it. We'd spend all day in the bike park. Like, it's a good time to be a trail biker. But which bike would you push off a cliff?
I think I'd push that Scott off the cliff.
Oh,
and I know, because
really?
like right now some engineers like, I worked for 4 years on making the thing, and like you did a good job in most cases, but it just doesn't, like for me and my personal taste, I don't think bikes need to be that complicated for no perceived benefit. Like when it comes to cable routing and other little things, like what if they just made that bike as a more traditional 4-bar bike and just got rid of some of the levers and things? Like, I'm glad it exists. Like I don't want to be too harsh on it.
There's a lot of boring bikes out there.
Yeah,
Kaz.
exactly. And for someone that's going to be, someone that wants all the gadgets, the guy that like used to buy everything from Sky Mall, he's going to want the Scott,
Yeah.
Some people don't remember Sky Mall, so it's fine. And I think it's fine that it exists too, but for me and for my personal taste, it just doesn't do it.
I think I would agree with you, Kaz. I'm somebody who wants long-term commitments, and the Scott is kind of scary in that way. Like, okay, so we didn't have any trouble, did we? No, zero troubles.
Yep.
But I just think, like, what happens down the road when I need something, and like, I don't know, Scott has lots of spare parts. I'm sure it's going to be fine, but yeah, I think long term that's probably not the bike for me. So I'm sorry, Scott. It really impressed us on the trail.
Yeah, it did great. Like riding wise, that is a very good bike. So I don't want people to take away the wrong thing. Like those guys said this bike was horrible. It's not horrible. It just didn't do it for my personal taste. And if I had an extra $11,000, it probably wouldn't be the bike that I'd buy.
Yeah, that's fair. One thing that I want to touch on before we leave here is how these bikes compare to one of our all-time favorite trail bikes, the Stumpy Evo, Kaz. Mm-hmm. You've put somewhere around 1 million miles on your Stumpy Evo. So tell me, what do you think that bike versus these bikes?
Yeah, like that last year, that bike was one of our favorites, and obviously some people say it's not actually a trail bike, it's an all-mountain bike, and I would agree, but we also have this Scott here, so that's kind of a good...
It's a hazy category.
Yeah, exactly. Like we make these things up anyways.
At least it's not down country.
yeah, forget about that. But as far as when you take a bike like the Stump Jumper, I think that kind of laid out a path that other companies are starting to follow in a really good way. Like you have that Fuel EX now, which I think has a lot of those same adjustment options or similar adjustment options, and I think that's a really good thing for a lot of people. As far as like downhill performance goes, it does have that little bit more travel. I think in some cases the bottom bracket's a little bit lower, so the Stump Jumper Evo, the cornering performance is really good. I'd put its cornering performance above some of the bikes here, but
not the high tower.
It just kind of depends. I mean, the high tower is really good. I think if you put the Stump Jumper Evo, it's so adjustable. If you put it in that low setting, it's pretty crazy. So it's almost like not fair because of how adjustable it is. You can just make it whatever you'd like. But I think that bike still holds its own as a really good option. But I think that Fuel EX is on par with that as far as like performance goes in that category. Yeah. So it's I think that overall, if I had to pick like Stump Jumper versus Fuel EX, that's kind of tough. Like I really like the Fuel EX's suspension performance. Yeah. I almost want to say that I prefer it a little bit better than the Stump Jumper Evo.
I think that's a big deal that you're saying that, because that's never been the case.
I think it just climbs a little bit better, and I think that it's using its travel a bit more.
Also though, Kaz, that Stumpy Evo's been out for like 3
or 4 years now.
Specialized was ahead of time.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that bike is still totally fine, totally relevant. Like it's a great bike. So I think that, again, I guess the takeaway here is that it still holds its own, but that Fuel EX is in a similar category of just really high adaptable performance. Yeah.
Last thing we're going to talk about before we leave, I just want to have a general conversation, Kaz, about how good these trail bikes are. Like crazy adjustability. We were riding things that maybe we shouldn't have been sometimes every now and then, but it's wild, isn't it? How capable all these trail bikes are. Proprietariness, head angles, all that aside, it's a wild time to be a trail bike rider, isn't it?
It's great. Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for a while, but now we're actually at a spot where I'd say like geometry has reached a point where it lets you get away with a lot. Suspension, all the components, obviously there's still issues, but nothing there's no massive glaring issue that I can think of like this needs to be fixed right now. So I think, if you're looking for just a general duty bike that can do just about anything for a long time, I think it's a great time, like you said.
And also the fact that we're in agreement about these things too. Like if you go back and look at all of our previous field tests, we usually like different bikes for different reasons because we're different riders, different priorities, but they're just so good at everything that it's annoying almost.
Yeah. All right, well, that wraps up our roundtable discussion. Hopefully you gained some insights about these 5 interesting trail bikes. Let us know in the comments below which one you would like to have in your own garage. If you have a garage, if you have a shed, you could put it there too, or in your bedroom. And stay tuned for more content from the Whistler field test.
I'd put that truck in my bedroom, just like in the corner so I could look at it.
You could do that.